Have you ever felt like your silence speaks louder than your words? Like you walk away quietly, and suddenly, the person who thought they controlled the game starts falling apart? That's not manipulation. That's what happens when a super empath reclaims their energy. Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome back to Chosen Being, the place where your light is honored, your pain is understood, and your story matters. If you've been told you're too sensitive, too emotional, or made to feel small for having a big heart, space is for you. Because in this video, we're talking about how a super empath, someone deeply intuitive and emotionally tuned in, can actually become a narcissist's biggest discomfort. Without even trying, let me start by saying this. This is not about revenge. This is about awakening. Awakening to your worth, your power, and the way your silence becomes a mirror to someone who thrives on control. See, the moment a super empath stops reacting, the narcissist starts unraveling. Not because you shouted, not because you argued, but because you chose peace over chaos. And for someone who feeds on drama, your peace becomes their panic. Let me take you back to a time in my own life. I was once involved with someone who had all the traits of a classic narcissist. In the beginning, everything was intense. He was present, affectionate, admired me deeply. At least, that's how it felt. And me being the empath I was, I poured all my energy into the connection. I gave, I supported, I loved without holding back. But slowly the tone shifted. Warmth faded. There were subtle jabs, moments of being ignored. Times when I felt I was explaining myself just to be seen or heard. I didn't recognize it at first, because empaths, especially super empaths, try to understand rather than judge. We say, maybe they're going through something. Maybe. I need to be more patient. We self-correct while they keep crossing the line. Until the day I burned out. Not in a dramatic explosion. Not in a tearful breakdown. But in stillness, I stopped explaining. I stopped proving. I stopped chasing. And that was the beginning of my healing and their unraveling. You see, narcissists need reactions. They thrive on emotional responses, positive or negative. And when a super empath goes quiet, that's louder than 1,000 words. He began texting. Why are you ignoring me? I wasn't. I was just protecting my energy, he called. Did I do something wrong? I answered once. I'm taking time for myself. And then I stayed quiet. That silence tortured him. Not because I intended to hurt him, but because, for the first time, he wasn't the center of my world. I started going for nature walks, meditating, reading, reconnecting with my soul. While he spiraled, wondering why the same tricks weren't working anymore, he'd say things like, "You've changed, you're cold, you're not the same." And I wasn't, because I had stepped into my truth. See? When a super empath breaks, the cycle stops reacting, starts living. The narcissist feels powerless because their power was never real, only existed in the energy you gave them. The beauty of this shift is that you don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to beg to be understood. You don't have to convince anyone of your value. You simply return to yourself. And in doing so, you become a mirror. One they can't look into without feeling discomfort. That's what happens when a super empath stops engaging. It feels like torture to a narcissist because they can't handle their own emptiness without your light filling the void. And let's be honest, this power isn't about ego. It's not about control. It's about energetic truth. The truth is you were never the weak one. You were the fuel. You were the empathy. You were the heart. And once you stop allowing yourself to be drained, you shine brighter. And they can't stand that because you've done something they fear the most. You've healed. And healing is what breaks the illusion they tried to keep you trapped in. In part 2, we'll dive even deeper into how super empaths rebuild after this kind of emotional trauma, how they rise without resentment, and how they use their light to Attract authentic, aligned connections. If you're resonating with this, take a breath right now. This is your confirmation. You're not crazy, you're not too emotional, you're awakening. Your silence is sacred. He started reaching out more, not out of love, not of confusion, out of fear. Because when a super empath goes quiet, it's not just silence, it's a statement. He tried love bombing again, old memories, apologies, sudden acts of kindness. That felt rehearsed. But this time I could see through it. It didn't hit the same anymore. Because I wasn't operating from a wound. I was operating from awareness. The fog had lifted. And with that clarity came peace. I remember one night, sitting in my room with soft music playing, journaling, and realizing I hadn't thought about him all day. That used to be impossible. Now it was my new normal. The emotional hooks he planted, they were dissolving. Because once a super empath starts loving themselves, they become free. But here's where the torture truly begins from the narcissist's perspective. They don't understand self-growth. They only understand supply. So when you grow past them, they panic. They don't know how to exist without being fed. And you stop feeding them. Not because you're cruel, but because you're finally full. Now, they'll say, you're selfish. You've changed. You're fake, but you're not any of those things. You've simply reclaimed your time, your peace, your worth. And that is the torture, not being able to control you anymore, not being able to predict your reactions, not being able to pull the same strings they always did. It reminds me of that moment when a bird kept in a cage for years finally sees the door open and doesn't fly away right away. It hesitates because it forgot what freedom feels like. But when it takes that leap, it never goes back. That was me. That is so many of us. And yes, the journey after is not easy. There's grief. There's confusion. There are days you miss the chaos because it was familiar. But then you start to breathe better, sleep deeper, smile without explanation. That's when you know you didn't just walk away. You came back to yourself. One of the hardest things for an empath to do is say, I choose me, because we're taught to carry everyone else's pain. No, Bob. But choosing yourself is not abandonment. It's alignment. And for a narcissist, your alignment feels like rejection, like abandonment. But it's not. It's just you rising. Something they cannot follow unless they face themselves. They may try to return through guilt, through fake healing, through someone else to make you jealous. But you'll know better now. You'll recognize the difference between connection and control. You'll see love as expansion, not exhaustion. And you'll never forget how it felt to be drained just to keep someone else full. So if you're in this space right now, questioning yourself, missing someone who hurt you, doubting your strength, let this be your reminder. You were the light in the room. You just forgot for a while. Now you're remembering. Now you're rising. And that rise isn't meant to hurt anyone, but it does expose the truth. Your peace will always disturb those who live in chaos. Your boundaries will always upset those who benefited from your lack of them. Your healing will always feel like punishment to those who never wanted you whole. But that's not your responsibility anymore. Your only job now is to keep walking in the direction of your light. One step at a time, one breath at a time, one no at a time. You're not selfish. You're sacred. You're not hard. You're healing. You're not cruel. You're conscious. And that is your superpower. Stay grounded. Stay aligned. And as always, never apologize for protecting your peace. See you in the next video, beautiful soul. And remember, your silence is not absence. It is presence, pure, powerful, and finally, yours. The quiet after you've withdrawn is the hardest part for them to bear. It's not the fight or the words, it's the space you give your soul to heal. When they can't hear you reacting, they start questioning everything in themselves. That's when the real unraveling begins. Days passed. They sent subtle messages through mutual friends. I hope you're okay, but you felt none of it. because your peace had grown too wide to hold on to their half-presence. One evening, a mutual friend asked, "Are you two okay?" I replied, "Simply, I'm choosing peace. No bitterness, no blame, just truth." And that made him angrier, because it offered nothing to feed on. He tried to guilt me through emotional messages. He said things like, "You're hurting me," not the woman I knew. And again, I didn't respond. In retreat, I was reclaiming my voice. Not speaking meant the mirror was unbroken. Then, one night, he showed up unexpectedly at my door. Not to reconnect, but to provoke. He knocked and said, "Can we talk?" I replied from inside calmly, "I'm resting," then closed the door. Gently, not with shame, with certainty. I heard him leave. No banging, no begging. Just footsteps retreating in confusion. Because the one thing he had banked on, my emotional reaction, was gone. In the days that followed, my energy felt lighter, freer. I lay in the sun, I journaled. I focused on my purpose. Meanwhile, he spiraled. He contacted people who hadn't heard from me in weeks. He tried to make others doubt me. He wanted validation for his pain. Still, I stayed silent. A wave of relief washed over me when I finally understood. I didn't need to rebuild his reality. He needed to face mine. Then he made one last attempt, sharing a sentimental memory on social media, hinting we'd reconcile. But I knew what that was. It was a performance, and I was now off stage, so I posted nothing. I continued in my peace. Weeks later, someone told me he asked why the silence. I thought, if he can't hear it from me, may he hear it from him. He craves emotional drama. And I gave him none. Empaths are often told healing is soft or passive. But this is the strongest action you can take. Not apologizing for protecting your energy, not shrinking to soothe someone else. You become the magnet for aligned souls, the signpost others read, the light anchored in truth. You may lose people you once loved. That's okay. You didn't lose them. You lost the version of you that gave away pieces of yourself to stay . And in that loss, you found you, your values, your peace. Remember this, healing doesn't look loud. Sometimes healing is showing up for yourself quietly, repeatedly, consistently. When you do that, their entire emotional economy collapses because it was built on chaos. Hey, and you no longer supply it. Your silence becomes your power. Your boundaries become your peace. Your self-care becomes your revolution. You're not doing this to hurt them. You're doing this to honor yourself. And in doing so, you give others permission to do the same. That's the final part of the stay. That's the final part of the stay. Like part of the state. Like, look at this. And we stay like, look at this. And we all know, I've been exploring that. We have been exploring that path. You're into a place of the stay, and in why we stay, and in do lies, and in why I say, we define why. I will like fucking why we say why, KTS, quote, with say quad by with K die, why we sakai with sikakwaitaki, why you like it to for can you like with for we say to you stick I to cup if you weak and we can we so you to sucky you could you to kick into a cup kick I you think for the guy the stick at what if the fight pick what it takes give it where Story, when your healing becomes your calling, your quiet becomes your testimony, your choice becomes your legacy. After the silence settles and the narcissist fades from your daily life, there's a moment of peace, but also a strange emptiness, because even though the relationship was toxic, it was something familiar. It gave you a role to play, to script to follow, and now, with them gone, the role disappears. You stand on a blank stage. No noise, no expectations. Just you. At first, that blankness feels scary. Like, who am I without them? Who am I if I'm not saving someone? Who am I if I'm not fixing things? That's when you realize how deep The wound really went. It wasn't just them. It was the belief you held that love must come with pain. That being needed is the same as being loved. That self-sacrifice equals worth. So you begin the slow journey of unlearning. You sit with yourself. In quiet rooms, you let tears fall. Not because of them, but because you're finally grieving the version of you that stayed too long. And as the grief moves through you, clarity starts to rise. You notice things. You walk into a room and feel how light it is without their energy weighing everything down. You listen to music and finally hear lyrics that mirror your strength. One morning, you wake up and you don't check your phone because you're not waiting for their apology anymore. You're not hoping they've changed. You're changing you. Begin creating rituals of peace. Lighting a candle in the evening, taking slow walks in nature. Drinking tea without rush, and slowly your nervous system softens. You no longer feel like you're in survival mode. You start choosing softness not for others, but for yourself. Then something powerful happens. You begin reconnecting with your original self, the version of you before the hurt, before the chaos, before you believed love had to hurt. And in that reconnection, you begin attracting people who don't drain you, people who love you without needing you to shrink. People who honor your silence, respect your no, and don't try to change your light. Only bask in it with gratitude. One day, a new person enters your life. Maybe a friend, maybe a mentor, maybe a partner. And they ask, what makes you feel alive? Not what can you do for me? Not why didn't you text back? Just what lights you up? And in that moment, something in you opens. Because you've been waiting to be seen for who you really are. Not for your role, not for your wounds, but for your soul. And now, the narcissist, where are they? Maybe still cycling through people, still trying to provoke, still searching for control. But you're no longer part of that cycle. You're no longer an option on their list. You're no longer emotionally accessible. That, my beautiful soul, is the real ending. Not the moment you walked away, but the moment you walked back to yourself. You begin creating. Maybe it's your art. Maybe it's your healing practice. Maybe you speak, write, guide, or simply live with presence. You notice you're not exhausted anymore. You're not over-explaining, not questioning your worth every night. You're finally aligned, and the peace you now hold, the peace you fought for, becomes magnetic. It draws in souls who feel like home. It creates safe spaces around you. It protects you without you having to defend yourself. You become an example. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. You survived. You healed. You returned. So when someone asks, how did you do it? You smile gently and say, I stopped apologizing for needing peace. I stopped carrying what wasn't mine. I started loving myself the way I kept trying to love others. That's how super empaths rise. Not with revenge, not with rage, but with radical self-respect, with divine stillness, with sacred boundaries. And that is the quietest, kindest, most powerful rebellion of all. You don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. You don't need to defend your light, just need to walk in it. And every time you do, you give permission to another soul to do the same. So if you're on that path right now, keep going. Even if it feels lonely, even if it's hard, because you're not just healing yourself, you're breaking cycles, you're shifting timelines, you're embodying peace and peace. It's the most powerful language a super empath can ever speak. See you, I honor you. And I'll meet you again in the light you're no longer afraid to claim. After all the healing, the boundaries set, and the soul's gentle reclaiming, there's a new chapter that begins. This chapter isn't about looking back or holding on to what was. It's about stepping forward into the life you deserve. A life where your energy is sacred, where your heart is honored, where your light is not dimmed to make others comfortable. You learn to trust yourself again, to listen deeply to your inner voice, to dance in your own rhythm, and to create space for relationships that feel like home, not war zones. I want you to imagine this: a life where you wake up feeling whole, where your peace isn't a temporary escape but a constant presence, where your soul's wisdom guides every choice, where your power is quiet but unshakable. That is your divine right. Not because you survived the narcissist, but because you chose to thrive beyond the story they tried to write for you. The final torture for the narcissist is this: you don't just leave, you rise, you heal, you shine so brightly that their shadow fades in comparison, and you don't have to fight or explain. Your presence alone is the proof of your transformation. So, beautiful soul, as you close this chapter, remember, healing is a lifelong journey, not a destination. Be gentle with yourself. Celebrate every small victory, okay? And keep choosing you every single day. Outro. Thank you for walking this path with me here on Chosen Being. If this message resonated, please share your story below. Your truth could be the light someone else needs. Like, subscribe, and join our soul family where every heart is seen and honored. Remember, your sensitivity is a gift, your healing is a revolution, and your light is unstoppable. Until we meet again, stay radiant, stay grounded, and keep shining your beautiful divine light. I see you, I honor you. You are chosen.